Hey everyone, this is Jono from Veracity with another video in my video series, this one on making better charts and graphs by understanding Canonical. All right, let's dig right in, some presentation this time. So this is a typical graph from the Veracity LRS at lrs.io in this case, that is just showing the score of some objects in the system. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And you'll see I have circled here at the bottom. These are nice, titles. Using the database, using Python, etc. I see they're a little long, so they get cut off in this particular rendering. But you get the idea. This is a human readable description of what's going on, what's going in that bar, and that's very helpful to understand your graphs, charts, reports. So how does this happen? How does this get set? As you know, we get data like this from content that it sends xAPI statements. In this case, John completed this thing that has an identifier of https:// my course1. And it's just one data point, one statement that we get in the system. When the LRS sees this, it starts to build a representation of the objects in the system. So in this case, now we have a canonical definition for this thing, and all we really know about it is it has this particular ID. Let's say some time passes. Now we get another data point. Bob completed it. In this case, same information, same IRI describing the content. So the LRS's canonical definition stays the same. Sometime later, we get another statement. Nancy completed it. In this case, same IRI, so we're talking about the same object. But now we have a name. It's called my computer content. So notice our canonical definition for this particular object now includes a name. Some time passes again. We get another statement from Joan. In this case, again, same data. So our canonical definition does not change. Sometime later again, now Jerry completed it. Aha, now we have a description. This is content about computers. So notice, just like the last time when the information in a statement changes, we get additional information in our LRS canonical definition. And I think we have one more. Now Trey completed it. And in this case, we have information about the type. We know it's a course. It's not a lesson. It's not a video. It's a course. And again, our canonical definition changed over time. So the LRS has this information now about this thing that has an ID of https:// my course1. And if we render a graph, now the LRS has all of this data about the name, the description, the type that it can use, even if all of the statements that we received prior did not have this information, like our first one from John, even though we just know from John that it was IRI my course1, now we know all this other information about it. So when we're building graph and charts, we can make use of that. Little danger. So let's say Joan, doesn't have to be Joan, could be anybody, sends another statement, passes in the same IRI. Remember, that's the identifier for the thing that we're interacting with. Joan completed it, but now Joan's statement comes in and says it's now my history content instead of my computer content. Notice that our canonical definition changed to my history content. So when there's a bar on a bar chart, it's now going to say my history content and not my computer content, even if you are like totaling up the number of statements when it used to be called my computer content. So there's one canonical definition, there's one name, and that will get overwritten if you change it. So really try not to do that unless you have very good reason. Your identifier describes an object. That object has a name and a description, and generally those things don't change. So just be very careful if you're going to make changes to the stuff that's in your statements. Okay. I guess one other topic here. Let me go on slide. Good. Okay, so these things change over time. The rules on how they change it can get a little bit confusing, and where these impact what you see in the LRS can be a little bit confusing. So although this is an overview, in the next video, I'll do a little bit more on how you can change this, and then when you change it, how that works. Again, it can get a little confusing, but let's jump into a demo real quick. So I have some statements here in a sample learning record store, all from John Doe, and you can see John launched all these things a bunch of times. This thing 1, this thing 2, and this thing 3. If I open these up and zoom in a little bit, you'll see, just like in my example, our object has an ID, and really that's about it. We don't have any information about the definition, name, description, or the definition type. So we don't know much about it. So if we were to create some dashboards about the things that were accessed, you see we get, we've said, give me all the object IDs and count the amount of times they were launched here. We know something was launched 5 times, and something was launched 10, and something was launched 12. The LRS is trying to be smart and aggregating these together in the same bar in this case, because they have the same lack of name and description. But we know there are 3 things that have some IDs that were launched a number of times. Not very useful, right? So I'm going to go into xAPI Lab. I'll put a link in the description of this on a little tutorial on xAPI Lab. And I'm going to add some information to these. So this ID, this thing 1, I'm going to put a name, the first thing, a description, this is the first thing, a language, ENUS. I'm going to send another statement about it. I'm going to do the same thing for those 2 other IDs. Quick update here. Oh, the second thing. This is the second thing. And let's send that off. And actually, you know what? I'll skip the third. So now if we were to go into our statements and kind of refresh, you'll see we now have some information in these new statements about, oh, look, it's called the first thing. It's called the second thing. Even though the ID is the same, this, oh, that's a bad example. Let me grab one down a bit further. This thing 1, same thing that you'll see up here in the first thing. This thing 1, same IRI. But now we have a description in these statements. So let's see what that did to our graphs. Let me just come in and refresh this. Now you can see this is broken out. We have a little label. This is the first thing. This is the second thing. And remember, we didn't name that third one just to kind of leave it as the oddball. But you can see that Canonical is really important as you're building these things out, as you're creating graphs. Having a good definition for your objects over time that is unchanging or mostly unchanging unless you have good reason is something that you really, really want to try to do. Okay, so more on this in an upcoming video. There's a lot to talk about, how to make good use of this, but I think for today, we're going to go ahead and call it. So thanks to everybody for watching, and have a good one.